Hi everyone, my name is Emmy Amarati and I'm Assistant Director of our ACU Online Writing Center, and I'm here today with our lead tutor, Christy Apostle. Say hi, Christy.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be doing this with Emmy.
It's a fun one. The topic
Yes.
of this brief webinar is discussion board do's and don'ts, but I do invite you to stick around after this session for some wacky shenanigans in our next discussion board webinar installment. Discussion board replies, definitely don't do this, where we'll also bringing in Sarah Tabuada, our multilingual specialist, and Dr. Basil Considine, our doctoral writing specialist. Um, for both of the sessions, we'll be posting the links to the recordings and the slide decks to our Online Writing Center website, and the green links to the resources in this slide deck will be active. And in addition, if you are so called, we are sharing a link on this first slide and in the chat. If you want to provide feedback on the webinar or other webinars that you've attended so we can better meet your learning needs going forward. So let's get started with our learning objectives for this session. First, understand and avoid the don'ts. What not to do in discussion board replies. Then we will go over learning objective 2, embrace and implement the do's, what to do well in discussion board replies. Our learning objective 1 is to understand and avoid the don'ts, what not to do in discussion board replies. But before we dive in, we're going to set the scene. So pretend you are taking Biology 101, and the discussion prompt for the week asks in part, have scientists found any of the building blocks for life in space? Or are all these building blocks and inorganic chemicals still only found on Earth? So you're in this class, you found this prompt entirely fascinating, and you wrote a masterpiece of a discussion post talking about what these elements are and the macromolecules they form. And you cited not just the course resources, but these contemporary resources about where they've recently found these elements in places outside Earth. And you are ready to dive into some excellent discussion that builds your learning community and encourages critical thinking. And then in response to your post, you find this. Hey, totally agree with you that the stuff for life is in asteroids, but I think you focused way too much on chemistry. Macromolecules, what? Because this is biology, not chemistry, and I wasn't planning to have to remember chemistry because I didn't do too well in that class, let me tell you. But I blame my uncle the scientist for that mess, LOL. Anyway, I saw this article yesterday about ancient aliens in Egypt. Whoa, BTW, do we need to reply to two people or just one? Because I think this is due tonight, question mark. So my space bubble would be pretty busted if I were the audience for this post. First off, if they agree with me, why is that so? I'd like to know more. Second, the overall casual tone and text speak in the reply make me wonder if they're really taking this discussion seriously. See ya, indeed. In addition, their talk about their uncle the scientist and the aliens in Egypt feels a little off topic. Or if it's not, the context and the detail are missing to help me connect the dots back to our original prompt and my reply to it. They also haven't told me what article about Egypt and aliens they read, so I can't look into it further if I want to, or even know if it's a reliable source. And most of all, I feel a little attacked. As the original writer, I chose to dive into the chemistry of the question, and I'd be happy to engage more about why I felt the points about biochemistry enriched our discussion, but not if their approach to me makes me feel dismissed. And last, and is it me, or does it seem as though this person posted at the last minute and hasn't entirely read the instructions? This is another sign that they're not taking this discussion seriously, and they're not giving me time to respond if I wanted to before we had to move forward to the next module, given the swift pace of the class. So if we put these concerns together, we're going to come up with a crisp list of what not to do in a discussion post response. And Christy is going to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you, Emmy. I really, really appreciate the point that you made that, like the responder does not have ample time to respond because it was so late.
Yep.
And so that's just a matter of respect when you're writing discussion posts. So let's dive into these discussion post replies, what not to do, or the don'ts. Uh, so do not or don't just write, oh, yeah, that's cool. I agree. Or good job. Because that doesn't, it's kind of hollow. It doesn't really add to the conversation. Another temptation is just to repeat what your peer said, your colleague said. So you just kind of quote them, you say exactly what they said, and they're like, this is really smart. Well, let's take it one step further than that. So go beyond repetition. Do not use informal language. Emmy illustrated that with the text speak. Emojis, just really casual approach because, as she said, maybe they're not taking it seriously, and definitely you don't want to come across like that. Uh, Definitely do not forget to cite and reference sources. You'll see in a lot of these discussion post assignments and the replies an encouragement to cite your sources, to cite from the weekly readings and the resources that are provided. And that's definitely something to consistently do to show that you're interacting with those resources. And do not assume that everyone has the same background. So your peers are not necessarily like you. So provide context. If you happen to know a detail, for example, or if you come from a background as the class continues and you know your background is dissimilar from your peers, provide context where needed to explain. Additionally, maybe you disagree. This will be discussed more in upcoming webinars about discussion posts. But if you disagree, like don't like be accepting. Don't be rude as dismissive. Like approach responses, approach your colleagues' ideas with acceptance and response that explores beyond what they're saying and what you're listening to. Do not wait until the last minute to reply. Again, that was something that came up with our scenario that Emmy presented. Don't forget to check the instructions. So it kind of becomes repetitious with discussion posts that, oh, I need to respond to 2 people. I need to do it by this day. So make sure you check for every class, especially when a new term starts, because the instructions may change about the due date and how many replies to provide. And finally, don't be concerned with formatting needs that usually aren't necessary in the online platform. So I know some people kind of like to type in Word and then paste into the platform. And a lot of the formatting is lost. So don't get stressed about that. This is not an APA specific paper, for example. So don't worry about double spacing or indenting paragraphs or references. Just, get the information in there in the platform as you're required to do. And now I will give it over to Emmy to give us another fun example.
Yay for fun examples. Okay, our learning objective 2 is embrace and implement the do's. What to do well in discussion board replies. So here is an example of a discussion post response that the writer of the initial post would probably appreciate and want to respond to. Hi, Quincy. This is definitely not a sign that I was watching Quincy Emmy starring Jack Klugman from the early 80s when I was working on this, by the way. Hi, Quincy. Thanks for your insightful post, especially your discussion of the discovery of organic molecules in asteroids like Bennu. The NASA podcast episode that you shared, Boyd 2025, was a great contribution. It brought in the perspective of contemporary experts, like a member of the team studying the Bennu extraction, to address the prompt about whether these components are found beyond Earth. I listened to the episode and was surprised you didn't mention Boyd's 2025 intriguing idea that crashing asteroids may have been vehicles that carried some building blocks of life to Earth. How realistic do you find their suggestion that some water in your body may be made of components that once flew through space? It seems possible given Fowler et al.'s 2013 description of elements cycling between the biotic, living, and abiotic, non-living components of Earth's biosphere. Best regards, Sam. And Sam also shared references for the podcast from Boyd, which is from NASA, and for the textbook for the course, Concepts of Biology from Fowler et al. So, what did Sam do well here? First off, saying hi, Quincy is personalized and it shows respect for their classmate and their larger learning community. Next, the response starts out with a point of praise. It sends the message of, hey, thank you for helping me think more or better about what we're learning this week, because you brought in this great resource that I didn't know about. It also interacts with the original poster's text by referring specifically to its content about the NASA podcast, and it very explicitly and quite politely extends that content. Sam obviously thought that Quincy overlooked a really important point, so they do bring that up, but they're doing it in a way that encourages Quincy to think more deeply. Hey, I saw this and I was surprised you didn't mention it. What did you think about such and such? This open-ended question that they asked of how realistic do you find, that would definitely encourage Quincy to keep the conversation going. And altogether, they've taken a really constructive approach so that them and the rest of their classmates, they can build learning together. Finally, the writing balances a conversational tone. There's a contraction in here somewhere, I think. Yes, didn't. So you don't have to pretend you're writing a super formal paper. You can write in a conversational tone, but Sam is using correct grammar, correct spelling, and they've used APA style citations in author date format, and they've supplied their references on the next slide. Also in APA format, they didn't worry about trying to indent it with a hanging indent, but they're there, following things like the italics and whatnot. So by including their course reading and the bottom one, the textbook, excuse me, and adding in this other source, they're not just interacting with Quincy. Sam and Quincy aren't just interacting with one another, but this approach lets them interact with the scholarly and contemporary literature from the field too. So this post can help us create a do's list for discussion post replies, and I'm going to pass it back to Christy to elaborate.
Hey again, everybody. So let's look at the do's, and these are obviously illustrated by Emmy's brilliant examples. So what should we do well? What should we embrace was our learning objective for the do's. So one thing, and utmost and foremost, include a respectful greeting that uses your peer's name. We saw that in the bad example. It was just like, hi. And in the good example, it was Quincy. So include your peer's name, your colleague's name, in order to make that personal connection, because we're all in a conversation, right? We would do that if we were sitting around a table and we just had a good meal together. So definitely include a respectful greeting that uses your peer's name. And then next, this is a really excellent observation and tip across the board, like for your entire life. Begin with affirmation or praise. So if you ever are delivering some sort of like advice, critical information, what have you, then begin with affirmation or praise. Hey, you made a super excellent point by saying this. Or I agree with your observation about whatever because it really made sense in this area. So definitely begin with affirmation or praise. Then to continue, you can build on your colleagues' ideas. So build on those ideas with your own perspective, your own experience. This is where you're bringing your originality into the reply. So this is not necessarily where you're just relying on the course readings and resources. You may use them if you like, but like bring up an idea and then maybe support them with the course readings, but definitely say like, hey, this point you made was really excellent. I agree with it because of my own experience or what I read the other day. And then supplement that if you need to. But this is definitely where you want to dig in with your own response. That's the whole point here, that you're doing a reply. Also, you should definitely do reference course readings and resources or scholarly sources when appropriate, which is basically what I was just saying. So go back. You'll have those weekly readings, those weekly resources. A lot of times they're YouTube videos, for example. You'll have them every week in your modules. Definitely go back to those. Dive into them a little deeper, and then kind of as Emmy was explaining with the good example of a response, like if you saw an article that was applicable and scholarly, like refer to that too. That would be the extra scholarly sources that you might include. Okay, let's look over to the right side of this slide. So other do's to consider. This is really, really good. And this is essential whenever you are in conversation with colleagues. Ask open-ended questions. So you want to ask questions with words like that begin with words like what, why, which, and I'll extend that list to say when, um, and to say um, maybe even how, less so perhaps, but these questions promote answers that are extended. So if you just say, are you, or, is this, you might just get a yes or no answer. And so definitely ask these open-ended questions with words like this, because they're going to just encourage dialogue between you and your colleagues in the class. Definitely keep your tone professional. Emmy mentioned that with the bad example. And I mentioned don't be rude or dismissive. So you want to be like helpful and supportive. And even if you disagree, you want to be constructive and thoughtful, and say like, well, this is a super good point, or perhaps we can consider X, Y, whatever. And so just approach it with a helpful tone. One good idea in this arena is to avoid the use of you. Like you said this might somehow become offensive. So just use that professional and supportive tone. Like this was a super good idea. What if we thought about this? Also, uh, for good practice all around, do use correct grammar, spelling, and citation formatting. So perhaps, APA requirements are not as strict with discussion posts, but you know what? It's super good practice throughout. So continue those sorts of good practices with mechanics and with citation. And then finally, always, as the last thing, check your course guidelines. Do check your course guidelines. So, one week it could be reply to 2 people, another week it could be reply to 3 people, one class it could be reply to 1, and the deadline may change during the week. So always check the course guidelines for how long your discussion post reply should be, and for any other specific instructions such as deadlines. And then Emmy's going to advance us. And we have covered a good deal of ground already. We reviewed important tips about discussion board, discussion replies, and such as understanding and avoiding the don'ts, what not to do in discussion board replies, and then embracing and implementing the do's, what to do well in discussion board replies. And don't forget the enlightening examples. So as you engage with us more at the Online Writing Center, we have some excellent resources that you should check out. The Online Writing Center group in my ACU. We have, Emmy mentioned our green links earlier. Here's one right here. Definitely check this out. You can post a question, or you can just read answers to a question you didn't even ask. So it's an excellent resource. Then you can also watch a video that we provide for the steps to make an appointment and to submit a paper. Please, please, please. I love this one. We work with you at any stage of your writing. So if you're brainstorming, if you're like really in the heavy stages of drafting, if you're just revising, or even just like doing like minor edits at the very end, like we work with you at any stage. So keep that in mind when you make appointments. There are two types of appointments that you can make. You can make the email asynchronous appointments. So with those, you upload the paper and then expect feedback from us within 24 hours. And then with Zoom appointments, those are real time. They're always in Central Time. So you'll just navigate back to the schedule, to the Online Writing Center schedule, and click Join Zoom Room, and then we'll be there for you. We also have many other writing related resources on the Online Writing Center website. These include links to our past webinars, which I'll talk about more in a minute. We have blog posts. We have the paper templates. We have a lot of grammar and mechanics handouts to consult. So definitely check those out. And then please, 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 as Emmy showed at the beginning when she was first talking about our beautiful green links, you can fill out a form to give us feedback on our webinars so we can better serve you in the future. So just to review, here is the process for submitting a paper to our appointments. You will first schedule an appointment at the Online Writing Center, the online on Writing Center, and then upload in a paper to the appointment form. And this is, you can do this for either the asynchronous or the Zoom appointments. It's up to you. And also, we love sharing upcoming webinars that you might want to consult. Since tonight's topic is about discussion board, discussion posts and replies and what have you, we decided that we were going to share some upcoming webinars based kind of on the same topics. So right after this, if you want to stick around, we have discussion board replies. Definitely do not do this. And so Emmy will be here for that. Sarah will be here for that. Dr. Constantine will be here for that. And then coming up on July 16th, once you get past the 4th, you may want to join discussion board replies and polite disagreement, which we talked about a little bit, right? That, you know, like avoid that rude or dismissive kind of commentary and just approach how to like disagree and then take the conversation a bit further. And so you'll find out more about that in that webinar on July 16th. There's some additional resources that we always love giving you a heads up about. The ACU library is here on the top link. And then I kind of mentioned this a minute ago. We provide templates. The Online Writing Center does. And the APA paper template is many, many, many students' best friend. So you download it and then you can use it to format every single paper that you do. And you don't have to think about double spacing. You don't have to think about how the headings should be formatted according to APA. It's all done for you in that template. There's also an APA self-paced course, which is really, really wonderful. If you engage in that, you can start it and then you can stop it. and you'll just learn all the basic ins and outs of APA. It's super, super helpful to get you familiar and to gain that confidence you need to use APA. And then we also have the Online Writing Center YouTube playlist. This is where you'll find past webinars, such as when we publish this one, and just other helpful tips that we decide that, hey, we need to put these out there. There are several ways to get in touch with us at the Online Writing Center. One really useful and practical way is our basic, maybe I should say general email address, online writing center at acu.edu. The reason this one is super useful is that, hey, you have a quick question and it won't take up the time of a whole email appointment or a whole Zoom appointment. Those are usually an hour. Then you just email it to us, online writing center at acu.edu, and one of our tutors will answer as promptly as possible. As mentioned priorly, you can schedule an appointment. That can be a Zoom appointment or it can be an email appointment. Just follow these green links, like Emmy said. You can also consult all those wonderful resources on the Online Writing Center website. And again, please fill out our feedback form so we can serve you as your needs allow. So thank you very much for joining us for this do's and don'ts of discussion board replies. And we look forward to seeing you more at the ACU Online Writing Center.